All right, we're still doing the Homeric Rhapsody thing. This story of Achilles raiding Eëtion's town of Thebe, and we're currently on a sort of like side story piece where Patroclus is with Idomeneus as they head off an army of Thracians and Cilicians that are coming in to support the city of Troy. Here we go. And then, from that point, O Muse, who live in Mount Olympus on Mount Helicon, and who knows all, and we who hear only get rumors and know nothing but what you can tell us, sing to us, O Muse, of that slaughter which occurred on the fields outside of Troy, between that Thracian and Cilician force, and that of Patroclus Myrmidons and Idomeneus Cretans. All were besprent with the dust and the mud of the field, and blood was flowing ever forth on both sides, though Patroclus Myrmidons had noticeably fewer casualties than any, and none had been taken entirely out of action, sent to the halls of that great horseman Death. Such was the rigidity of the training of those beetle-black Myrmidons. And so, great Kronos' son had opened up the spout of the sky, and that heavy drops of rain spewed forth, pelting the armor and the bronze, and all the ox hides grew heavy, and the bronze grew slippery and chafed their limbs, as all the men fought in the mud, slipping and sliding. Ecamon, a man on the side of the Myrmidons, who came from a noble family, but joined as a lowly initiate to the Myrmidons, not informing any of his status. Such was he excited to join against the wills of his father and mother and grandfather, who he lived with. He was cited by a Thracian tall and broad of shield, Astor, who had seen him slipping in the mud and took advantage of this, pushing him down into the mire as his face gasped for breath, and all muck and mud filled his lungs until naught but a single bubble burst forth from that still pool which once contained his life. Seeing this, another Myrmidon, Esteban, had grown wroth for his friend, with whom he had played many a game of dice and shared much wine with during the feastings of the army. And so he cast his spear toward that Astor of the Thracians, but it flew over his shoulder, not entirely missing, for the war god drew his share of blood on that day. And that spear, great and heavy and long-shadowed, punched through the cheek-piece of Danon, another Thracian from the south part of Thrace, who grew up in the mountains alongside a craggy hill, every day going forth to the river and playing with his beloved brother, who had already fallen on the fields of Thrace before he left. And as that long-shadowed spear punched through the bronze cheek-piece of his helmet, not could hold back that strength, but it went through into his skull, shattering the bones, and his eye had fallen forth from the flesh, held on by a ghastly string, and his teeth were all shattered. Thus did he forget his sorrow for his brother, and thus did he forget all whom he ever loved, or all he ever would be, all those hopes and joys and sorrows, all gone to the dust, along with the blood that poured forth. And thus was the fighting thickest among Idomeneus' men, who had the greater force, and surrounded one side of the army of Cilicians. And many a deed was done that day by those Cretans, and many a deed beside by all on those 4 quadrants of the battlefield. All right. I had zero idea of what I was going to do for this one. I don't really have a plan for this one with Idomeneus and Patroclus. I just thought it would be kind of cool to go back and see what's going on with them. And I also think structurally, I was thinking about this earlier, like structurally it's kind of interesting that we're continuously refusing to go back to the part with Achilles, who's the main character of the story. And, you know, first we were with Achilles, and he was like getting ready to leave to go on this expedition. Then we went to the gods. Then we went to a big, long, extended thing of a catalog of the Thebans. And now we went back to the gods and then to the Patroclus's thing. So it's kind of like an interesting denial of satisfaction, which I don't know if that's like screenwriting wise or writing wise good, but it's an interesting idea. There were some nice little moments there. I've noticed that with my sort of death scenes, I'm a little too verbose with it. Homer does ones that are a lot even more violent and filled with pathos than these ones are, but he does it in fewer words, which, you know, I suppose it's like that thing that Charles Dickens or whoever said where it's like, I wish I had more time, or rather, I would make this letter that I wrote you shorter, but I didn't have enough time, which is to say, like, you know, on the second revision, it'll probably get shorter, and Homer had who knows how many revisions, even probably more than the lifetime of one quote-unquote Homer to make what we know as the Iliad. So I don't expect that on the first draft it would be that good. But I actually did kind of like some of the imagery that we came up with there. Some really brutal deaths and some nice... some of the parts of the Iliad that I like the most is when it's kind of like jumping back and forth of like somebody's spear missed and it hit this other guy, and somebody who's friends with him and they're upset because of that, and they cast their spear at that guy and now he falls and they're fighting over his body, and it's like this back and forth thing, which we got some good stuff with that, so we'll see where we can go from there.